under oath, okay? Back on the record, the matter of Mr. Gregory Martin. Mr. Willey, go ahead.
Ms. Fuller, as an Oregon Advocate LLC, are you aware that under dissolution or effective dissolution, that you're not supposed to commence a proceeding by or against the limit liability in its limited company name as it affects to winding up a business? So technically, I believe, I hope to ask the question, did you know that your business was suspended?
No.
Objection.
Business.
Asked and answered. She's already explained what was going on with the business multiple times at this point, and I think he's stating a lot of legal conclusions about what happens when there's an administrative dissolution.
Okay, I'm going to overrule it. Though I do agree that I think you made your point, Mr. Willey, about this issue, but go ahead.
May I ask the court something?
Sure. I don't know if I can answer it, but if you're welcome.
Well, okay, I'd like to at least put it on the record.
Sure.
Because it stated objections about me asking this question, and in their own talk about this, none of them ever mentioned that just that it be signed a piece of paper. There are certain rules when you're under administrative dissolution where you're supposed to be only, regardless of you know it or not, you're out of business.
Okay, so
I'm just
so
trying
that point that you're trying to make, what you do is you make that argument when it comes time for closing arguments or finishing the case.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. I see you're trying to make that connection for me right now, and you have made that point. I understand what you're trying to do. The proper time to argue how all of this comes together is at the end, the closing argument, and perhaps when you testify. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So, from November, Mrs. Fuller, from November 2023 till April 2024, how many new businesses or petitions did you file with any courts?
Objection, relevance. This is talking about other cases, not this one.
It's relevant. Oh.
Overruled. Yeah, she can answer that question.
Hey, I don't know.
But, okay. Thank you.
Do you have an idea of a number?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Can you describe the way you get new business as Oregon Advocates LLC?
We get calls from physicians, from social workers, from adult protective services, from different entities that maybe do the same service that are no longer doing services because they're retiring. We get referrals from the Guardianship Association, from attorneys.
Are you aware on April the 18th, when you filed your petition, that it's void?
I don't understand the question.
If a business solicits business to another client,
Testifying.
I'm giving an example.
I don't think he's finished the question, so it might be premature, but then you can re-raise it. Finish the question, Mr. Whitley.
If a business, that's say in construction business, you hire a painter, and you find out that the painter didn't finish his work, and you go find out that he was never in business, what do you consider that?
I don't do construction. I don't know.
Well, any business entity that is alleged to be in business has a license from the Secretary of State when you filed your petition with this court on April 18th, my birthday, and you weren't in business, what do you call that petition? Could it be considered fraudulent representation?
No, I wouldn't consider it fraudulent. And
What?
the petition, because the petition was filed under Gazelle Fuller, not Oregon Advocates. The Oregon Advocates, that was a mistake. We rectified it. I thank you for bringing that up to our attention. We rectified it. We put things in place so it doesn't happen again. And we've taken care of that situation.
In the petition to this court on April the 18th, did not Mrs. Fuller and Mrs. Fosback state to the court in that petition that you were both employees of Oregon Advocates LLC?
I believe the terminology was owners.
In the petition, it states that you're employees and you had no other employees except you two. Is that correct?
We are owners of the entity.
The petition says employees.
Objection, asked and answered.
Assistant. You can ask your next question.
Okay.
Mr. Williams.
As employees of Oregon Advocates LLC, aren't you required to have workers' compensation coverage?
Objection,
No,
the
you're
student
not.
facts not in evidence about whether or not they're employees or not of Oregon Advocates LLC. She stated multiple times they are owners.
Yeah, I think she said they were owners.
But the petition says employees.
Okay, so then that's it. You drawn that. fact
Okay,
out.
okay.
I think you well made your point on the license issue with respect to the Secretary of State, so it may be a good time to move to another point.
In your petition to this court on April the 18th, 2024, ORS 125.060 states for the records who must be given notice. Were you responsible for giving notice to the 7 children, the 7 children of Mr. Martin?
No, my legal counsel is.
Okay. Do you know if your counsel gave notice to any of the 7 children? We've got on the record 2.
I was told that they gave notice to whom was appropriate to receive notice at that time.
And what does that mean? Who's appropriate? Are you talking about the 125.060? It states who's appropriate. What do you mean by who's appropriate?
I would probably defer you to my legal counsel.
According to 125.060 number C, it states that who must be given notice is, did you give notice to any of the most closely related to the respondent?
You're all right. I don't know if there's a question there.
Yeah, I didn't hear a question, Mr. Lee. Go ahead. So sustained as to testifying. I just need a question, Mr. Williams.
Was there notice given to the closest related relative to the respondent?
I would defer you to my counsel.
Okay, and was there notice given to any cohabitating person with the respondent?
I would defer you to my counsel.
And as the attorneys in fact, who was on record in your knowledge as the attorneys in fact, or the power of attorneys?
I was told that it was Selena and Earl, but I did not receive any supporting documents at that time to support that. It was a verbal.
Okay. Have you ever seen any supporting documents?
Actually, I saw it today, yes.
Okay. And when you spoke with Megan Huffman in the beginning days, did she mention a report that she was given on December 13th, 2023?
No.
Did you know why or how you were given a heads up or a tip on Mr. Martin?
My recollection, the December tip that you say, this was where her testimony was the first I heard of it. I was not informed of a December tip. I was only informed of the most recent and why he was in the hospital at that time.
And so you never heard about the son Rasta K. Waleed prior to April 18th?
I knew of you, which is why I called you to inform you of the information that I knew at that time.
And what did you know of me?
That you were a son, and I felt at that point, I was told he had 3 children, and so I attempted to reach all 3 children to inform them what my intentions were, why I was involved, and what my next steps would be.
And those 3 children, you weren't told by Mr. Waleed that there were 7 children?
I don't recall a number of children. I don't recall discussing additional children. Just Dawn and Elsina.
Just those 2?
Just those 2 at that time.
And they mentioned no other brothers or sisters?
They did not mention any others until weeks later.
And those weeks later, were those other children given notice?
I would defer you to my legal counsel.
Do you remember hearing of Kimberly Ann Martin here in Portland? My sister?
Recently.
So could you say there might have been maybe not as much information or available about the other 7 children, so you only settled for 2 of them?
Well, unfortunately, we were only as good as the information we're given. And a lot of times we're given pieces of stories and not a full story, because unfortunately the protected person is unable to share their full story. So we worked with the information that we were given.
When you called me, why didn't you ask me any questions about my other 7 brothers and sisters?
Because it wasn't about you, it was about your dad.
So the notice was not about giving notice to me about any questions?
I'm sorry. You received notice, but the concerns and the needing to protect was not you. It was for your dad. So my job, my duties, my goal was to focus on your dad, not you.
So you're telling me that calling me is notice?
No, I called you to inform you. Like I said, I was introducing myself. I was telling you what was going on. I was telling you what my next steps were and what we were planning for.
And did I not tell you on the
courtesy.
phone that I am required to be served or given notice?
No, I don't believe you did.
Okay, and did you speak with the court visitor, Mrs. Garman?
Yes.
Did you let her know about Rasta K. Waleed or Greg Jr.?
Again, my job is for the protected person. It is not about you.
Well, isn't it in the best interest of the protected person to respect the law and notify who the law says needs notice?
I don't understand the question that you're asking.
When you spoke to the court reporter about my father and what's in his best interest, is it not in his best interest to follow the law on the notice of who must be given notice regarding his disposition?
It is always important to follow the law. However, I am not the know-with-all to what the court reporters do. That is for her to report accordingly and for her to provide whatever notice and notification that needs to go out. My job when the court monitor called me was to ask questions about the protected person, what my jobs were, what my goals were, and what we're going to be working towards. It was not to discuss what the beneficiaries or children or anybody else were. It's solely about the protected person.
So between you and the court reporter, knowing both of you have a legal obligation to report who must be given notice, how the notice is to be given,
Objection. He's testifying at this
I'm
point.
just repeating you.
Well, it might be premature. I think he hasn't finished. So you can reserve that objection and let's see. If you finish your question, Mr. Willie.
Between the court reporter, the Dope Protective Services, and you as the temporary fiduciary conservator, isn't it in the best interest of my father to make sure that the people he loves or the people that care about him need to know about his disposition and report that to them according to the law?
I feel it is important, which is why I called you.
But is that the law?
It is not the law for me to have to call you. I do it as a courtesy.
But between you, the court reporter,
So,
she's jumping around.
Mr. Willie, you've made your other point very well here, and so I've absorbed that point. It probably is helpful to move to another one.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may, for clarification's purposes, there is no court reporter. It's a court visitor. I think it'd be a lot more helpful if people would use the terminology, because I feel like the terminology is getting thrown around and that can be really confusing, because there is such thing as a court reporter. That person is not here or has testified in this matter.
I object, Your Honor.
So I thank you, Ms. Bungie. I mean, I know what you're referring to, but it is helpful. It's a court visitor. That's who Ms. Garman is. That's the phrase. A court reporter, that's something different. So when you're referring to Ms. Garman and her report, she's what's called a court visitor, okay?
Correct.
All right.
Okay. She reports to the court through her visitor report.
But referring to her as a court visitor is,
Okay.
that's the title, okay?
Okay.
All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Willie.
Okay. As far as the court visitor is concerned, and the Dope Protective Services is concerned, your legal counsel is concerned, you have as a petitioner, you have a obligation and a right to report, correct? To the loved ones, the family, the power of attorneys, whether in another state or not, the disposition of your petition to the court to those who're supposed to be given notice, correct?
Your Honor, objection. If we could just cut down these compound questions that's really lengthy and confusing as to what question is actually being asked of the witness.
So the objection is to a compound question sustained. So what that means, Mr. Willie, is it's just helpful, like we talked about earlier, when you're asking questions. Easier said than done. Cross-examination is hard. Short, simple questions rather than long lead-ins. Okay? All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Are you familiar, Mrs. Fuller, with VA Form 10-5345?
I am not.
VA Form 10-5345 is the request for authorization and release of health information. Are you familiar with
Objection,
it?
is that a question?
I'm just asking, is she familiar with the form?
She said she was not familiar with the form.
The objection is sustained, so she was not familiar with the form. Keep in mind, Mr. Willie, and this is very hard for people to understand, so you're in good company, okay, very normal. When you ask cross-examination questions, you're very often going to get an answer that you don't like, and you're going to get an opportunity to respond to anything that she said that you didn't like. The time right now is not for you to tell me why you didn't like it or why you disagree with it. That's why they're objecting. Rather, instead, you ask your questions, you get the answer, you're stuck with the answer, you take some notes, so I want to clarify this later with the judge, and then you come back to it when you're under oath and you testify. Okay? So you get a chance to respond. You just don't get to respond during the cross-examination. And it's very hard to do. I appreciate
It
that.
can't be.
So go
Mrs. Fuller, have you ever worked with Nathan Rudolph, the attorney here before?
No, he's never represented me.
How was Mr. Rudolph selected to be an attorney for my father?
I would defer you to him.
My father can't speak. He didn't pick
I
him.
would defer you to Mr. Rudolph. I
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object. I don't know what the relevance.
It's
of this
relevant,
is.
Your Honor.
I mean, maybe he could explain why this is relevant. I was appointed by the court, so I don't know what the relevance is of this line of
So,
questioning.
Mr. Waleed, why is this relevant?
It's relevant. We're just curious that since we've known about him, he hangs out with this party. He doesn't seem like a separate party in the best interest of my father. Mr. Doyle was taken off the case. He had a
I understand.
conflict of interest.
The
I'm just
objection-
curious.
I understand the objection is overruled. I think she answered the question. She said,
I asked him.
well, that's an answer.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so-
That's considered. So when she said ask counsel, that's considered an
I
answer.
mean, I think there's a better answer than
Oh,
that.
okay, okay.
But that is an answer, yes.
Okay. Okay. What is your relationship with Jessica from the VA hospital who was here giving testimony today?
I don't have a relationship with Jessica. I met her for the first time when I went and met the protected person.
Is it normal for a witness, after being stated, to hang out with you and your crew and your attorneys?
I don't know why not.
Is it normal for the Adult Protective Services lady, after stating that she couldn't come to court, but she had to come, that once she gave testimony, she stayed for the rest of the day too, around you and your crew? I'm just asking the questions. Is that normal for
I
you?
don't really speak for them. I don't.
Have you seen a government agency personnel hang out with a private after questioning in a very contended case?
I don't speak for them. Anybody is more than welcome to hang out with us.
Okay.
Do we meet after hours and go? No, there has been no meetings after hours.
Well, okay. You're answering the questions. I'm just listening for answers. I just know this is a contended case, and I'd like to know.
Objection.
I'm asking another question.
Testifying.
I'm asking another
So
question.
you can ask your next question.
Yeah, my next question is, when did Don Brethor contact you?
I contacted her. Same day I contacted you.
April the 18th.
Sure.
Okay. And when did Don Brethor do a consent form with your Oregon Advocates LLC?
I don't know of what consent form.
It's in the file where she consented for Oregon Advocates LLC to represent my father. She signed stated something. I don't remember the date. I'm just curious when it happened. If you knew, if you don't know, it's okay.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't even understand what question you're asking.
Are you familiar with the consent form for your services?
Does she consent to my petition?
If that's how you want to call it, you said you didn't know what a consent was about, but is that it? Did she consent to your position while she signed the form?
Can we see a form? I don't understand which form you're asking that she signed. I believe that she signed a consent to my petition stating that she would agree and be happy if I served as the protected person's guardian. If that is the form that you are referring to, then
Yes,
the
I'm referring
attorneys
to
asked
that.
her if she was consenting. She said yes. They sent a form. She signed it. They sent it back. I believe that was submitted, but I do not know the date it was submitted.
Okay, thank you. And in relationship to that relationship or consent form, was it Don Brethor that gave you the names of our alleged other 7 brothers and sisters?
I believe yes. She did give us the names of other siblings, but I believe yes.
Can I ask who those names were?
I don't know off the top of my head other than the 3.
How often have you seen my father at the VA hospital?
3 times.
Have you ever talked with him for any length of time?
Objection, asked and answered.
I think it's abundantly clear that your dad is not able to have a conversation with Mr. Lead, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Have you ever fed my father?
No, I have not.
Do you recall the feedback from Tom Stinson regarding the court visitor in any letter or statement?
I believe in his letter he made some comments regarding a court visitor's report.
Do you recall what that letter might have been about?
It was requesting for the protected person to have his own legal counsel.
Not that one. That was one statement. I'm talking about in respect to George Norby's opinion on you being unsuitable as a guardian.
Initially, that sounds like a statement, so if you could...
Okay, let me break it down. Tom Stinson wrote a letter to the court in May concerning some statements that were made in your petition, and somehow the court reporter was repeating the same...
The court visitor.
Visitor was repeating the same statement that you made that, according to Mr. Stinson, was not accurate. Do you remember that statement?
I do not recall the court visitor statement.
Do you know why Judge Norby had the attitude or felt a particular way about your guardianship or professionalism?
I don't dare try to understand or put words into a judge's mind or comments.
But you did.
Objection, that's not a question.
So, yeah, we need a question. Mr.
Yes, I do.
Sustain.
According to Judge Holland or Mr. Stinson, they say that you can be misleading. Is that true?
Objection. He's asking a compound question again. Is it Judge Holland? Is it Tom Stinson? It's unclear from his question.
Sustain. You can rephrase the question.
Okay. Why did Tom Stinson call your guardianship misleading?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Are you misleading in your guardianship?
Not intentionally.
Has it been described that in the beginning you're very fun to work with, but when it comes to follow-up, it might not be there?
Objection, no question, Your Honor.
I just asked you.
Well, I think that is a question. I think you said, has it been described?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I don't recall if it's been described as that.
Has anyone outside of this courtroom ever questioned your guardianship?
I would assume Judge Norby did, which is why we had a hearing.
Do you disagree with his findings?
It's a she.
Oh, she. Yes.
Yes, I do.
Can you explain?
I've been doing this for a lot longer than a lot of fiduciaries. I am very good at my job. I put 110% into my job. at the risk of family, they come first. They always do, because they can't speak for themselves. I will take the blame for my legal counsel not following things appropriately. I will take the blame for the Morningstar case and not providing enough paperwork or getting things to Adult Protective Services in a timely manner. I will absolutely own that. However, I am good at my job, and I make sure that my clients are protected every step of the way. And there isn't someone else out there that I feel that could do the job, whether we get paid for or not. And I would want someone like that on my team.
As a son of the protected person, my father, Gregory Martin Sr., can you help me process a little bit the thought of your experience being able to handle my father's estate, knowing the position that he left it in?
Not gonna lie, it's challenging. It is a mess. We all understand that, but I'm willing to accept that, and I'm willing to work on it. As I testified earlier, there is multiple tiers to this. Step 1 was getting the guardianship, as I explained to you. Step 2 is getting his finances under control, getting him placed so that he is safe, so that his needs are met. And then everything else we're gonna tackle, whether that be any federal claims, any UTC claims, any regaining any type of property, going after any type of money. Those are all things, and they are important. I hear you, they are important, but not as important as your dad's care and making sure to get him out of the hospital and into somewhere safe.
Can you please explain to me briefly about what gives you the creativity, the authority, that you have what it takes when to be my father's guardian or conservator?
To be honest, there is not another fiduciary that I know of out there that is under as much scrutiny as I get. And I don't back down from it. I'm happy to provide to anybody that asks. And I'm happy to tell and share what type of errors I made and what I've done to correct that. I'm happy to mentor others so that they understand what not to do. We go into this, we don't get paid for over a year. I want to ask a question, but we go into it not for the money, not for what we're going to get out of it, but what type of difference can we make out there?
And from your track record, what kind of difference have you made?
My track record has been a growing track record. There was the Morningstar case, and there wasn't any issues up until the Reineman case, where it brought up the Morningstar case.
So is the Morningstar ruling by the judge misleading?
No?
So, Mr. Willie, you're doing a good job making very good points. I think we're kind of rehashing over and over and over the same point. I want you to know that I've absorbed that point, so might be helpful for you to move on to your next point.
How old is Oregon Advocates LLC?
Was established in January of 2021.
So give or take 2 to 3 years?
January of 2021.
Okay. There we go. Have you had any conversations with Dr. Rose Hauser?
I've had multiple conversations with the doctor, but I don't believe that doctor.
Which doctor did you have any conversations with concerning my father?
I don't recall their names off the top of my head. They do a rotation though, so I always feel like it's someone different.
Okay, is Jennifer Dreener applicable name?
Your Honor, asked and answered. She's already stated that she does not remember the names of the doctors that she's talked to that take care of Mr. Martin. So asking her specific names of doctors she's already answered that.
Overruled. You can ask him.
Are you familiar with Dr. Dreener?
No.
What about Dr. Kimberly Dorr?
I don't recall.
These are just doctors' names that are on the list for the court visitor that she mentioned, and I'm just trying to figure out which ones you might have spoken with concerning my father's care.
I understand the point, Mr. Lee. It's just you got to ask a question.
Okay.
So your objection.
Thank you, Your
Honor.
Is Dr. Catherine Quirk, the social worker, has she consulted you in anything about my father?
The name does not ring a bell. My direct contact is Jess.
Jessica Lawrence, you mean?
Correct.
Concerning her, Jessica Lawrence's position as a caretaker or a social worker for my father, where does she get the responsibility or the means to say that she would consider you as my father's fiduciary? Who gives her that authority?
I don't know.
Is that normal?
I don't know. I would assume would be a question for them.
Have there been any other guardians or conservators that have been solicited this case to my father?
I don't know.
Why
I have not solicited anybody else.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has been solicited or visited him prior to me. I don't know.
Why do you think that this family or this court or anyone else should have to give you special demands or special reasons or follow-ups or extra things to do for you to just do a good job with my father?
I don't understand the
Well,
question.
there was stated, I believe, that said that you were willing to take on extra duties from the court, extra duties from different positions in order to do a good job for my father. Why can't you just do a good job?
I believe I do a good job. However, if the court has any concerns, the extra work is on me, not anybody else. It's for me to have to explain with extra filings, extra reportings, extra communication. Not anybody else. That's on me.
Are you familiar with Lydia Rivera?
I am not.
Oh, no? Okay. Did you get to talk to my sister Alzina at all?
Yes, I've talked to her.
What was the summary of that particular discussion?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did my sister make any statements about Alzina? Did she state in any correspondence with you any financial problems with my father?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did Alzina Martin ever contact you?
Yes.
And what did she state?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did Alzina ever state that she was the oldest daughter?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained. So, Mr. Lee, what your sister said is hearsay. So, That's why the objections are being sustained. That's why she can't answer that question. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Do you know my sister Alzina Martin?
I've met her, yes.
Have you been to her place at 2507 Northeast 8th?
I have not.
Have you spoken with my mother Rose?
I have not.
Did you know that Rose and my father are best friends?
Okay.
Were you present at one of the Honorable Judge Patrick Henry's hearings concerning my father when he was presiding judge?
I believe it was a telephone hearing, and yes, I was in attendance.
Do you know why Judge Henry gave you a 2-day waiver in conducting this petition or motion for temporary guardianship? Do you understand? Can you share with us the reasoning behind that? Maybe.
Objection, speculation as to why a judge made an order.
Sustained.
Did Judge Patrick Henry state to you why he was giving you a 2-day notice?
No, the judge did not talk to me.
Would that be something your counsel would know?
I believe everything would be on a record. I don't believe anybody has a one-on-one with the judges.
Were you on the July 29, 2024 ex parte hearing with Judge Alicorn?
Yes, I was.
Was I there at the hearing that day?
I don't recall.
Was your counsel, Ms. Bungie, there?
I don't recall.
Was your counsel, Ms. Salisbury, there?
Yes,
Was counsel for my father, Mr. Rudolph, there?
I don't recall.
Was that a telephone conference or was that in person?
Telephone.
How did you get notice of that hearing?
My counsel informed me of it.
How many days in advance?
I don't recall.
Jan, I have a few more questions. I'm just trying to make sure they're stated right so that way I get no objection. And my goal is just to put things on the record for later. It is an honor to have to finally meet with you folks, especially you, Mrs. Fuller. I know there's some things that you have done that were really positive.
Objection, he's providing testimony.
Okay, let me answer the question.
Sustained.
I live in Montana. Other than your first phone call to me on April 18th, have you made any other prior calls to me concerning my father?
No.
Did you respond to my text concerning where my father was located?
Yes, multiple texts. Yes.
Thank you. I have no more to say.
All right, Ms. Wilkes, do you have any questions?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Do you recall in a previous testimony you gave about Mr. Martin's or joint bank statements? Do you recall looking at any other bank statements prior to July 2024?
I was given 1 year's of bank statements.
From what dates to what dates?
I believe it was from July of 2023 to April of 2024. So a little short of a year.
Are you aware at any time that Mr. Martin was handling his own affairs?
I was not aware.
So the statement that you made earlier, I need to phrase, Your Honor, I need to say this where there's not an objection, so please allow me some time. The allegations that you made earlier of the dollar amounts that were in the account, do you have proof of Mr. Martin managing?
I have bank statements.
But do you have proof of who was managing the accounts?
My concerns were focused during the time that I knew that he was hospitalized and couldn't get to an ATM. At those points is when I know that there is something fishy going on. My investigation has not even begun on the financial side because my focus is on the guardianship side and his health and safety.
But you made those allegations, so now you're saying you haven't really, have you, other than looking at the bank statements, have you did any further research?
No.
So would you have knowledge of a time frame when Mr. Martin was handling his own funds?
I looked at the time, my concern was at the time that he was in the hospital. If you were in a hospital, you can't go to an ATM and draw out $1,000 and $2,000 a day. So that was where my concern would have started. And again, that's going to put on a side panel because my focus is on the guardianship, his health, and his safety. That will be addressed after we get step 1 done.
Are you aware of anyone being in the hospital and not having any liability, bills, etc., while they're in the hospital?
I would assume that bills still come, like house payments and things like that.
Or in a prior statement you mentioned Mr. Martin had 5 to 6 properties that had list pendings on them?
Correct.
Do you know the address of those properties?
I have them written down, yes. I have the copies of the list pendants, yes.
Okay. Are you certain that Mr. Martin owns 5 or 6 properties?
I was certain, and I believe the judge agreed when he granted us an order granting the list pendants that Mr. Martin was attached to those properties at one point in time, in a very recent amount of time.
Do you have any proof that Mr. Martin was attached to those properties?
I believe that the list pendants are proof because his name was on those titles.
Excuse me.
Are you aware that it may have been possible the list pendings were put on the wrong properties?
I'm assuming anything is possible, but I would rely heavily that the judge agreed with the documentation that was provided that allowed us to grant the order for those left pendants.
Were there title reports pulled?
That I'm not sure of. I would assume so. I believe that's how you look at those titles, is that that's how you figure it out, is you have to pull the titles, but that was done by a title preparer, and I don't know what their processes are.
Are you familiar with the Toria Tanner?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Are you familiar? Did you look at any other, I rephrased the question, Your Honor.
Sure.
On that bank statement that you refer to, are you aware of who the primary owner is on those accounts?
Yes, I'm aware.
Who do you think is the primary owner on those accounts?
According to the bank statement, it is Gregory Martin.
Are you aware of any outstanding contractor liens, bills Mr. Martin had that he had to pay out or was directed to pay out?
I'm not aware. I would assume that there are bills out there. No bills have been presented to me at this time to make arrangements for or pay for. But I would assume, being a homeowner myself, that there are bills that need to be paid on a monthly basis.
So, you've only looked at bank statements
Correct.
that.
My focus was on his health and well-being, not the financial side at this moment.
So in other words, you really don't know much about bank statements.
No, I received the bank statements that Adult Protective Services had subpoenaed. I reviewed those bank statements that they subpoenaed. I saw that there were large withdrawals in a short amount of time on a daily basis while he was hospitalized. That to me would spark concern enough to where I need to freeze things until we can figure out what the full story is.
With your allegation of 6 properties, what do you think would the finances be to take care of 6 properties?
Large.
Oh, okay. So, large amounts withdraw. Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, objection. It's not a question, it's a statement.
Sustained.
Do you have any information on Lucas
Gorman, yes I do.
Garman? Are you aware that there's $1.2 million owed to Mr. Martin?
I am aware.
Are you aware that it was requested that an investigation be opened by AP?
APS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not aware of that, but
Okay.
it needs to be done, but I was not aware of that.
So you wouldn't be aware that it's been requested on more than one occasion?
No, no one has informed me of that.
Okay. So when you had your conversations with Megan of Adult Protection Service?
Ms. Huffman, yes.
You were never informed.
No, again, my focus has not been on the financial of any financial concerns, any property concerns, any money concerns. My concern is on his health, well-being, and the guardianship. That takes second precedence.
The questions are being asked because of the previous statements you gave. Have you received any medical records or any communication with any social workers at Emmanuel Hospital?
No, I have not.
Are you aware that there's a connection in all this confusion?
Can you define confusion?
Well, you indicated earlier in your statement that it was a difficult. Yeah.
Is there a question? The
Yes,
case is difficult, yes, it is a difficult case.
The question again is, have you contacted Emmanuel Hospital?
No, I have not.
Have you been in contact with social workers at Emmanuel Hospital?
No, I have not.
Have you been in contact with social workers at Good Sam?
No, I have not.
Were you aware of Mr. Martin's discharge dates from Good Sam?
Vaguely, yes.
How did you
I believe
come about that?
They were in the records from the VA, and that was told upon me when I reviewed the VA records.
You mentioned requesting PT for Mr. Martin.
Yes,
Are you aware that it's been requested on 4 or 5 occasions and denied?
I am not aware, but I'm happy to do an appeal.
Are you aware that a placement was found for Mr. Martin by Mr. Wisdom and Selena Wilkes?
I was not aware. Prior to today's hearing, I believe it was discussed.
Were you aware that it was denied?
No, I was not aware.
Were you aware that we were denied prior to any filings access to Mr. Martin?
I was not aware. Most denials, I will say, are because Medicaid has not been in place or because there's not financial funding to pay for someone. And I have seen in the past for lots of places to deny based on that. Like no one wants to take someone for free. And so I don't know if that played a...
Your Honor, that's not the question.
Yeah, I don't think there was a question pending, so
The question was,
that was I'll sustain what is a constructive objection there. Did you have something else?
Your Honor, I believe that question, my client was getting to the answer of that question. It's a complex question. My client is a professional fiduciary, and so my client was trying to explain the answer to that question. I think it's important to let a witness finish before we interrupt her to decide whether or not the testimony is actually relevant.
Objection, Your Honor.
I agree with Ms. Bungie, that is important. So, Ms. Wilkes, do you want to re-ask the question that you had?
were you aware that Mr. Wisdom and Selena Wilkes was denied placement of Mr. Martin?
No.
Were you aware, or did the social worker Jessica share with you that she spoke with someone that had confirmed a place for him to go?
No. We have not focused on discharge at this time.
Are you aware of a directive that was on file?
Can you define the directive?
A medical directive?
The advanced directive?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Have you reviewed that document?
I have not.
Were you aware that Mr. Martin was homeless?
No.
Were you aware that Mr. Martin was released from a nursing facility without his insulin?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilkes. Redirect, Ms. Helston.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fuller, I believe it was just asked whether or not you knew that Mr. Martin was homeless. And you responded that you did not. There's also been statements about whether or not it takes a lot of money to manage all these houses. Do you believe he'd be homeless if he had all these houses he had to pay the cost to manage?
No.
In the bank records that you looked at, were you able to verify who owned that account by talking with Brethhauser?
When I talked to Dawn, and I'll screw her name up, so I'm sorry, Miss B. She gave me the last four of the account number, which matched the same four numbers that the subpoenaed bank records came.
Did she indicate those were the records she managed at the time she was power of attorney?
Correct.
Whose name's on that bank account?
The first one is the protected person, and the second one is Selena.
Miss Wilkes?
Correct.
Did it appear that anybody else had access to those accounts?
No.
I apologize, we're going to jump around a little bit. In 2019, at the time of the Morningstar removal, did you use different counsel than you do now?
Yes, I no longer use that counsel.
Okay. Did you provide notice of your removal in your guardian's report in all of the cases after?
Yes.
Are there often times where an attorney that does not represent you files a petition for a guardianship and conservatorship, naming you as the proposed fiduciary?
Yes, and I've been trying to stop that, but sometimes that's difficult.
Do you or your counsel always get an opportunity to review that petition before it's filed?
Objection.
Overruled.
No.
If you find that an attorney has filed a petition and it has incorrect information, what's your process?
The new process is my counsel then contacts that attorney and files an amended to their petition, or requests that the other attorney file an amended petition to correct the errors that are on there.
And I think for clarification purposes, does the court visitor, is she under a legal obligation to provide notice to anybody?
I don't know.
And is it your understanding that all of the notices that were required under Chapter 125 in this matter have been completed successfully?
That was what I was told by my counsel, yes.
And did you ask for individual appointment or business appointment?
It is an individual co-appointment with my colleague, Ms. Bosbeck.
Okay. In the time that you've been serving as a professional fiduciary, do you find it unusual, the transactions you saw in the bank records?
They're definitely alarming.
And were you involved with, or are you involved with, Adult Protective Services as they move forward with their founded abuse claim?
I am not involved with Adult Protective Services and how they do their practices or any further claims or investigations that they are. However, I am aware that there are other investigations out there that are, and I will happily participate if need be.
Okay. So the bank statements that you saw, they seem to corroborate the founded abuse claim by Adult Protective Services.
Yes.
Objection.
Sustained.
No more questions, Joanna.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sullivan, thank you. You can step down. Ms. Ellsworth, Ms. Witness.
All right, we are going to call Brett Callahan.
Okay.
We'll find him.
Is this your last witness, Ms. Ellsworth, do you expect? Is this your last witness?
And then Joanna.
Okay. So we can climb to the witness box here and remain standing and take direction from my clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. And for the record, please say your first and last name and spell them both.
My first name is Brett. Last name is Callahan. BRETTCALLAHAN.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Callahan, for being here today. Can you tell the court what you do?
I'm an estate planning lawyer.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
I was barred in 2011. I started at my current firm in 2013.
Okay. And do you often do guardianships and conservatorships?
It's about 50% of my practice.
Okay. And do you ever do very many contested proceedings or anything like that?
When I need to, when the occasion arises, I do. I like the nice, friendly, easy ones, but yes, I do.
Sounds right. And let's see. About how many guardianships and conservatorships do you do a year?
I would say that it varies. A minimum of 10, maximum of 30 would be my guess.
Okay. And do you often stay on after that person's been appointed, or do you usually come off the case as representing petitioner?
It depends on the case. It depends on who I represent. I would say most of the time I am representing the fiduciary and I stay involved. Occasionally my client is petitioner but not fiduciary, in which case I would resign.
Certainly. And what, I know it's hard to estimate, about how many estate plans do you do in a year?
100, give or take.
Okay. And you would say, how many of those include things like powers of attorney?
If I do an estate plan that doesn't include a power of attorney, I don't think I've done my job very well, so 100.
Sounds good. Let's see. And then, do you happen to know the respondent in this matter?
No idea.
Your Honor, I'd like to move to have him recognized as an expert witness.
Objection.
Basis?
Just because he's a estate planner doesn't make him an expert estate planner. He didn't give those credentials in his opening statement, even though he might qualify to be a professional, but it doesn't qualify him just by stating the ask to be it.
Okay, your objection is noted. It's overruled. The court will recognize Mr. Callahan as an expert in the field of estate planning, specifically guardianships and conservatorship cases. Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to start with one case in particular. Do you happen to recall the William Fow case?
I do.
Can you explain a little bit about what that was about?
The William Fow case was a guardianship and conservatorship petition. Mr. Fow was a member of the Kaiser Health Plan who was boarding in a Kaiser hospital in Washington County. He was medically stable, I think basically from day one, but there was not a suitable discharge plan in place. There was not a suitable person to do discharge planning because he lacked the capacity to do so, and had, I don't recall if it was uninvolved family or no family. I represented Kaiser Health Systems, who asked me to assist them in finding a professional fiduciary. She is in the room today. We petitioned for Ms. Fuller's appointment as guardian and conservator in Washington County. Washington County, unlike Multnomah County in my experience, will not keep custody, or custody is not the right word. They will ask you to transfer out a case if the protected person moves, and in that matter, the petition was filed with the express intent of taking the person from Washington County, where they were boarding in the hospital, returning them to their county of residence, and so we ended up dismissing the case.
Okay. And did it come to your attention that a judge in Washington County may have misinterpreted or made some assumptions regarding the facts as to why that was moved?
Yeah, so I would explain it this way. The court, in their letter to me and to my client, and again, my client was not Ms. Fuller, it was Kaiser Health Systems, said that they would like an explanation. If the case was going to stay in Washington County, they would like an explanation of the removal in, I believe it was Lane County some years before. They also said, by the way, our county is not going to keep your case. I had a conversation with my client, which was Kaiser, and Kaiser, being the giant health system that they are, said...
We don't have to pause here
Sure.
for a second. I need to disclose to the parties that my wife works for Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente is an enormous organization with thousands and thousands of employees. I don't know Mr. Callahan. I've never seen Mr. Callahan in my life. I have no reason to believe that I have no personal bias, interests, etc.
I think you do.
It's good. Mr.
Okay.
Khalid, you'll get your opportunity
Okay.
putting this on the record. This court believes it can be absolutely fair and impartial with respect to assessing the testimony of Mr. Callahan. So with that, I think it's important that I just disclose that to the parties. So with that, I'm going to leave for about 5 minutes, and the parties can discuss what their positions are going to be with respect to that issue, and or whether or not how important it is for Mr. Callahan to continue testifying. We'll go off the record.